Ashley, good morning. Am I really loud?
Yeah.
I'm really loud.
Right,
I will tone it down. Too much coffee this morning. So thank you all for having us. Before we get do introductions, how about we cue the video? Can we show the video?
So yeah, that was a fun little video I made to help promote the launch of Akinio PIM at my former employer, Air Corporation, which does all kinds of packaging and just an amazing company. You have their products in your home right now. You use them all the time, and you have no idea. They invented bubble wrap, but they're also incredibly prevalent at every grocery store around the world. If you're buying a tray that has meat in it and it's got a little plastic lid, Air Corporation, Cryovac division, made all of those materials, those plastic films, and they also make the equipment to package your food. Some of their big customers are Tyson, Smithfield, JBS. I mean, they are completely ubiquitous in the food packaging space, but you also know them as the inventor of bubble wrap, an incredibly huge and interesting, fascinating company with a very complex SKU set and product assortment. And implementing Akinio PIM, first ever PIM at there, was a great experience for me. And that's why I get to talk to you today.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Who says PIM is not sexy, right? How sexy was that video?
Right?
I loved it. So I'm Steve Harris. I lead the sales team here at Akinio. Been here for about 3 years. Came from the e-commerce space. And when I came over here, I was like, PIM, e-commerce, which one? PIM's way sexier. Like, product data drives consumer experience, right? If you don't get, I think what we heard this morning was that if you don't have your product data right, you can't have a great customer experience. I think that was pretty clear from this morning.
Yeah, it's got to be relevant. It's got to make sense. It's also, too, one of the things, so my background is primarily as a creative. So photographer, videographer, copywriter, advertiser, animator. And, you know, creating an experience, making something relevant, making something exciting, you know, we all want to surprise and delight our audience. And that's an example of trying to surprise and delight your internal audience, to get them on board, to get them to pay attention to you, and to make sure that they know that what you're doing to create experiences for others, think about how you're creating the experience for your own internal audiences, and get them excited, get them energized, get them interested in what you do, and see how sexy the work you do is. Also, I gotta say, I'm feeling a little self-conscious up here in front of all these people, and everybody that's been on this stage has been so good looking. I'm a little concerned. Does this microphone make me look bald and fat? I think I'll be okay. Also, you know, in my career, one of the things that's always helped me is I tell a lot of dad jokes. I typically tell dad jokes once a day. My favorite one right now is because of the egg crisis. A friend of mine has been buying and selling baby chickens. They go cheap.
Is this mic on? Hello?
I don't think so.
So, one of the things that I took away from this morning that kind of inspired me was that AI, for the people in this room, is actually going to help bolster our careers, right? I think what we all want to drive business benefits for our companies, but one of the things that I heard from listening to Rahman and Fred was that AI is actually going to make product management, PIM experience even more, that much more attractive. Your resumes are going to be better from this experience, and for me, that kind of excited me. Anything that you took away from this morning?
I mean, you know, it's so spot on. I had a sort of a revelation when we were working with PIM at there. one of the things that happened, and my company's been going, or that company's been going through so many changes lately, and a lot of the content creators that we had working for the organization were let go, and so suddenly here I am with this new PIM, and I need to fill it with content. And I know from working with content creators that we had thousands and thousands and thousands of documents about our products. How do I get those? I don't want to copy and paste from PDFs. That's not efficient. So I was able to load all of those documents into an AI tool. And from that AI tool, I was able to build a lot of content for the PIM. And one of the things that I really liked about Akeneo was how easy it made that for me. So I made an attribute. And I would make long-form content from the AI tool. And then I would put that in as an attribute. And then I use the AI tool within Akeneo to reference that along with the information that was coming from our ERP, to do naming conventions, to do bullet points, to do short descriptions, long descriptions, and different kinds of descriptions for other channels. And it was at that moment that I went, okay, this is great, and I sold it to the company. I said, hey, this AI tool is helping to generate this content. It's also notating where it's pulling the content from, so we're kind of doing a content audit at the same time. And then I went, oh, that's backwards. We shouldn't be scraping from PDFs, because then you get stuck into a cycle of like, oh, we need to update that PDF. Let's contact the designers that made that PDF, pull the working file. No. That content, that information, that data that AI is so hungry for, that needs to be live content, not static, not dead PDFs. That, oh my God, it's print, right? We're still working with print when you're talking about that. So that content needs to be in your PIM. You're gonna get your data from your PIM. DAMs also too, if you're going to need to create new image content, it's still there. Those packaging, they're very technical, they're very detailed, they're very unique. I tried going into different image generation tools and say, hey, make me a modified atmosphere packaging for ground beef. And it went, huh? Like, no. So, but if I could inform that AI tool from images from my DAM and content from my PIM, and if I can get my CRM involved, so I can personalize that content, personalize that experience for each individual member of the audience, wow. Jaw dropped. And earlier today, it's exactly what they were talking about. Like, that is how you surf the wave. I mean, it's just, the PIM is a critical piece of that structure to create dynamic, personalized content for your customers. That's, I think, what we're talking about today, and it's just so spot on.
Well, Andrew, as we were preparing for this session, you kind of did a really good job. I'm in sales, so he had to dumb it down for me what we were going to be covering here today, so put it in my language. And Andrew walked through this BMW example that really resonated for me. And the reality is that across this room, there's all different levels of maturity around the data model that Fred and Ramon talked about, and being able to understand, right, that's foundational before you start that PIM project, about understanding your data model. Because if you don't get that right in the beginning, garbage in, garbage out. So Andrew, can you walk the audience through like the BMW scenario?
And caution, I know there's probably some BMV aficionados in here, and if I get something a little wrong, apologize. But I had to explain what a product model was to people there. In areas they had a category, like barrier bags for different types of pork products. There's around 1,200 SKUs in that category, and they hadn't really seen the cascade. So I used the BMW example, and it's no longer essentially accurate, but basically in 1979, BMW wanted to make a product model that would reach across the pond, that would be understandable by somebody that wasn't German. So if you're familiar with BMWs, they have a series, a car series, so there's a 3 Series, 4 Series, 5, 6, 7. They just get bigger as the numbers go up. And then the second two numbers, it used to be, there's an old saying in cars, if you're a car nut, there's no replacement for displacement. So the bigger the engine, the more powerful. The cubic inch size of an engine matters. It's no longer relevant necessarily with like turbochargers and hybrid cars and EVs, but basically it was, if you had a 5 Series, a 525, was a 5 Series with a 2.5 cubic inch engine, 530, 3.0. And on and on and on. And then they would use like little modifiers, like an I for iDrive, for X for their all-wheel drive cars. And then they started to take the M, which is their performance line, and they put that as a precursor to that. So there was a logic to that, and it cascades, and it goes across all of their vehicles. It really makes a lot of sense. And once you see it, you go, oh, I know what that car is. Oh, now it's really the bigger the number, the more powerful. They're calling it virtual displacement, but it still helps to understand like how you're building a model, and it helped me there to explain like there's a logic to this. We're going to look at the data from our ERP, and we were finally able to look at our data because we were using SAP or as our ERP, and it's pretty hard to filter, sort, and look at data in SAP. And it's also incredibly intimidating if you're not an SAP expert to suddenly dig in and get into that. So we're able to like start putting in grids, start putting in filters, very quickly filter and sort in the grid in Akeneo. And it was one of those moments where you just kind of, oh, I haven't seen our data this way. Virginia, that has run our ERP for 30 years, when we got the data into the PIM, I started showing her, I'm like, listen, okay, so this SAP class aligns to this product hierarchy, aligns to this. Do you see this? Do you see how this cascades? And she goes, no, that can't be right. And I hear her clicking away and digging into SAP. And I'm like, Virginia, I'm looking at the exact same data that's in SAP. It's not different. Like, we're just seeing it different. And she goes, I can't believe it. You're right. I've never seen our data this way. And it made her rethink when she's bringing in new product lines, how she's going to build a convention. And this too, this little chart here, I really like because this was very, very helpful to our IT group. To help understand that, yes, you know, our IT group often would say, well, we own all the data. Okay. You own the infrastructure, but there are some parts of the data that belong to the business. MDM, that's an IT governance tool, right? And they can have it. I'm not interested in digging into MDM. However, PIM is a business tool. It needs to be owned by the business. Yeah, we need support from IT, but then I want to run it. And so early on in our explorations, we were trying to figure out, like, okay, how are we going to route, you know, these materials into this category? How are we going to build that product category? What is our 5 Series? What are the cubic inches, right? And we were trying to automate it through Azure. And I went, wait a minute, whoa. I don't want the IT group to dictate what SKUs go into what product model. I need to do that in the PIM. And so the fastest, quickest way we were able to do that was by using the rule engine and creating associated product models. And, you know, I see you nodding right there. He helped us so much. We use the rule engine is so straightforward and so easy to use. And using product associations made so much sense to me immediately. Not only were we able to start to build things and have control of building those without using IT, without having to use developer resources, but just using the UI within Akeneo, which is very straightforward. We were able to make changes really quickly and start with very large product models and then start to bring them into much smaller, more specific categories with a lot more detail, with a lot more nuance, which at a company like Square, that just hadn't been done before. Everybody talked about very general, large-scale things, but we wanted to start our own e-commerce solution, and you have to get specific, you have to get accurate to make sure that it's relevant to the customer. The very last thing you want is for somebody to add something to cart, and at the end, look at the description and go, I don't know, is that the, you know what, I gotta double check. Maybe I should call somebody. You know, that's a moment of failure. So if you can get as much accurate and relevant content as you can, and very, very specific, then you have a chance of making a sale.
Very insightful, so thank you for that. What were the business drivers that led to you making the investment in a PIM, and why Akeneo?
Yeah, it was a long process to get to an agreement on that we needed a PIM. It was interesting. I think it was really a matter of people trying to organize all of that in Magento and realizing that that was not going to work. Realizing that we really did need a structure and we did need things to cascade. And also, we hired McKinsey, and McKinsey goes, "You guys need a PIM." And we worked for a company that said when McKinsey told us to do something, we just kind of did it. We paid them so much money. And so we followed that line, and when we went through looking at different PIMs, we knew it was going to be something completely new to us. We looked at some options, and some of them are rather intimidating and look a lot like SAP, and we knew that wasn't going to be the avenue. It was really the idea of the ease of use, the ability to have it adopted by other members of the organization that weren't really in merchandising. And also too, I was pretty convinced from the beginning that the real value for us wasn't on our e-commerce platform, but our other channels, because PIM really works great at a point of discovery and decision making. Like, you're actually trying to pick the individual product. And a lot of times when our customers would go to our e-commerce site, they were reordering. They knew what they had and they knew what they needed. But the point of discovery for us was a lot of print, and it was also our website. So we were building connections to AEM, and we were building a solid print channel. And I think back to the times when I was at Electrolux, and I was responsible for all of our packaging. And I kept thinking, my gosh, if we had had all of the, like, if you ever look at a vacuum cleaner box, it's an immense amount of information on the back of a vacuum cleaner, because you're just desperate to try to connect and say, yeah, it solves that problem, it solves that problem, and you have pets, and it eliminates odors, and it does this and this and this and this. And so all of that content, every time we would have a new package, it felt like we were starting from scratch. And if there's one thing I've learned, is being a creative and working with creative teams is making that content as extensible and reusable as possible. And PIMs and DAMs can help you do that if you're thinking about it the right way. And you do have to get a lot of buy-in, because all of a sudden, we did demonstrations, with print. One of the sponsors here. Oh, sorry, my head is rather large, and they could not find an extra big mic. There we go. But like all of that content, the idea of multi-channel and having a single source of truth, there's nobody that generates content that doesn't think that's valuable. Really, you don't want to be in a place where you're like, oh yeah, I wrote that for this 6 months ago. I don't know what's changed since then. So let me start the whole interview process over again. Let me talk to all the SMEs. You don't want to have to do that. You want to have live data that if something changes, you can update it, and you know it's accurate, and you know it's your single source of truth rather than your single source of record, which is a very different thing. And single source of record would be, your ERPs and those kinds of things. But aggregating all that information into a single source of truth, that's where the real power is, and that's what makes content extensible and reusable.
Hold on, I'm confused right now. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about a single source of truth, you're talking about live data, but your company's B2B. B2B companies don't care about customer experience.
That's so funny. I worked for a company for a relatively brief period of time where I actually really heard that. I was coming from Electrolux, and I started to work for a B2B company. And at one point in time, the owner came to me and he said, Andrew, I know you come from B2C, and you're writing all this content, you're creating these advertisements. They're all full of emotion, and they're trying to grab attention, and that's not how B2B works. This is a businessman we're talking to. He doesn't care about emotion. He only wants the facts. How many dollars are you saving me? What problem you're solving? How does that affect my bottom line? That's the only thing he cares about. And I said, okay, that's interesting. Help me understand, because if you don't need to feed the emotion of a buyer in B2B, why do you have a sales team building relationships, taking people on nice dinners, taking them on golf outings, if there's no emotion involved? We can just email them a white paper. We can just send them an Excel document. And that's the reality. Whether it's internal audiences, B2B, B2C, you have to create an experience because they have to trust you. They have to believe that you're going to solve a problem. And that isn't all just up here. Part of it has to be in a belief, has to be in trust. And you can generate trust and you can generate belief with emotion and with your content.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Okay, so we have to drive this great customer experience. We did the data modeling, the taxonomy. We've got the data out of this source of record into the source of truth. Product descriptions. How do we write the product descriptions? Is there any way that we can automate that? You know, some of the audience out here has millions and millions of SKUs, and they have teams. And how do we drive those product descriptions? How do we improve the process around that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, we did use that tool. I'll name the tool. They're not a sponsor, but there is a tool. We used Text Cortex. And Text Cortex allows you to choose from multiple language models in a dropdown. Allows you to create personas by brand or use one of their built personas. It does a great job, but it was like the highlight moment where we loaded all these documents in and we generated content. But we were also able to use things like, one of the things I loved about using the Akeneo AI tools for those attributes is you can just write examples. Like, we were using naming that comes from the 17-digit character count in SAP, and it's not consumer friendly. It's not easy to understand. If you're used to it, you're used to it. But I was like, okay, I want it to be sort of like that, but also include this, and make it look more like that. And using examples in your AI tool within Akeneo helps build that. And we were able to build titles and descriptions and bullet points, all from a level of base content as an attribute, and then using the tool within Akeneo AI, which is chat, to really refine that and make it more specific. The number of hours that would have taken for individuals to do, ridiculous.
Wow, great. So it improved internal operations efficiency. It sounds like an old boss that was really, really important to him. Did it drive significant improvements in the ROI for your organization?
What it really did was deliver more. It's funny, when we started to actually send information out to distributors, and we looked at the content, because we do use a lot of distributors, we started to look at the content across our distributing chain, and it was so inconsistent, it was unbelievable. And that happens because they would send us a spreadsheet and say, hey, these are your products that we're selling, write something. And sometimes that went to a product line manager, sometimes it went to several, sometimes it went to the content team, not often, but it was all over the place. So what we were able to do is drive a level of consistency and drive more accuracy. And so if you look at their products on different distributor sites, it is much more closely aligned than it ever was. And it also gives a level of, let's just say, professionalism, that when they ask you for that content, you can go, yeah, we can get you that. We have a PIM. We've got that, and we can send it to you, and we'll have it to you soon.
So we talked about systems of record. We talked about single source of truth. You talked about customer trust earlier, but can you elaborate on that? How has Akeneo helped you to really drive that trust in the consumer for your organization?
Well, I would say, again, it's multiple audiences, right? So our customers are people that are doing packaging, but they're also our distributors. So it was pretty recent that we had one of our distributors, or a customer of ours that sells office equipment, primarily in Europe, Lyrico. And they said, hey, we've got a new PXM and we need to onboard you. And there were levels of panic around the organization. We don't have that data. That's a lot of data. They want a lot. They want way too much. I was like, wait, guys, did you forget we built a PIM? That's what this is for, right? We built a PIM so that we could provide that data. And if we don't have the data, we better find it and get it, because these are our customers reselling our product, and we need to provide that to them. And I would say that across the organization, there was a deep sigh of relief that they weren't going to have to fill out Excel sheets individually and pass it around, and that there was somebody that said, no, we're centralizing this. We're building this capability, and if we don't have it right now, we're gonna get it, so the next time they ask, it's real simple. I think that built a lot of trust, and also too, like I said, if you did a Google search for Instapack, our on-demand foam package, you would find so many different descriptions of it, so many different things. Amazon had one thing that was actually pretty nice because of their requirements, but some of our other distributors, and we're able to centralize that and bring that same level of experience that we had on Amazon to other distributors. That kind of thing builds a level of security and trust that the same thing that I saw here is the same thing I'm buying right now.
Do you have a favorite feature of Akeneo?
I mean, I'm a big fan of the grid. The product grid, again, it goes to looking at our SAP data in a new way. Without that product grid, without being able to filter and sort very, very quickly, that, and then being able to send out shared catalogs to like portfolio managers and say, okay, here's your category. Have you ever seen a full list of all of your SKUs in your product category? What? You mean, wait, no, I need to go talk to somebody, send them an email about the data I need from SAP, and in 2 days they'll send it to me. No. You can dig in. You can self-serve. You are now empowered to take action by yourself. You've now have the power to go home. You can do it yourself. Like, that is incredibly powerful for people. And I think that's honestly one of the things I'm most proud of is we empowered our product line people, and we empowered our regional marketing teams to go get the data themselves and learn what they were selling.
Love it. As I look at this illustration, my eyes are drawn, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, that you include CRM in this architecture. I don't think many people in the audience are thinking about a CRM when they think about a PIM project, but you talk here in the text here about the personalization.
Yeah.
Like that data, that source system of record is typically the CRM, right? CRM, customer record. Knowing that information is so critical to driving that product experience.
And that's it. A company like theirs is, their customer base is widely different. When I first started there, I asked my boss, I said, okay, who's the persona of our buyer? And they said, well, that's anybody that wants to send a product somewhere else without it breaking. And that can be anybody from running an Etsy shop out of their kitchen to Amazon, UPS, you name it. Like, their customers are literally all of the brands you've ever heard of. Customers like Dell use our foam to package servers. It's a massive company. And so understanding that, and then understanding that those personas are very different. What matters to them, what's relevant to them, what's relevant to the head of packaging at Dell might be a little bit different than what's relevant to somebody that's selling jewelry off of their kitchen table. They still need to get things done, they still need to ship things, but it's that persona, and that comes from that marketing brain. And also too, as a creative, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, who am I talking to? As a creative, there's a little aside, but sometimes people would say like, oh, you guys are the art department. No, man, I'm not making sculptures. This isn't self-expression. I'm incredibly empathic, and so I can put myself in the shoes of a buyer, but I represent the company. So I'm trying to understand, how can I communicate what the company provides to the person that needs it, and how can I make that relevant to them? So persona is everything. And what I'm so excited about with AI tools is if you can take that persona, try to understand that point of view, and then take that product and target it very specifically, tailor it to that individual person. I mean, that's a kind of marketing automation that, if you're familiar with, we used AEM a lot, so like Marketo and all of those tools and Target, Journey, it goes on and on and on. All of those tools to try to create that experience, it's been promised for a long time. It's really hard. It's really, really hard to get all those systems to work together. With AI, I think we're going to solve it because you're going to provide the data, you're going to provide the information, and you're going to provide the relevant audience, and it's going to go, okay, let me go talk to them. That's just massive. And again, if your data is centralized and it's alive in your PIM and your CRM, you've got something magic.
We're out of time. I'm going to ask you one final question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to the audience that's considering a PIM and inspire them?
I would say you want to have as much power and control over the data and how you route it, how you move it, how you use it. And it's a hill I'll die on. It is not for IT to own. It is for the business. And the business needs to own that. And the people that are going to really buy in are going to be the people that create content, market your products, and sell it and want to connect to an audience.
Andrew, thanks so much for the wisdom that you shared with us. Andrew will be here all day. If you have any questions, grab time with him. He's full of wisdom around product experience, and we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.